Hello students, let's read this question. Mr. Cantu travels from McAllen to Houston at a constant speed of 50 miles per hour. Which of the following graphs represents D, the number of miles traveled after T hours? We're going to start underlining important information. And then here we have that he travels from McAllen to Houston at a constant speed of, okay, so the speed is 50 miles, and I'm going to put this in a different color, per hour. Okay, now, which of the following graphs, so it looks like, which graph represents D? And D is going to be the miles traveled after T hours. And hours, I'm using this. Okay, so we did circle or underline, in which our case we highlighted, and I'm gonna box the question. So we need to focus specifically on finding the graph that represents D, the number of miles traveled in T hours. Okay, so everything is making sense. So for miles traveled, I need to identify what is it in my graphs. On choice A is here. Distance traveled in miles is also here, here, and here. Okay, so then it means that all these values on the y-axis will be the total miles. And then also we have the number of hours. And the number of hours, we have it on the x-axis. Great. Now, because I have all these relationships, I know that every graph has an equation, and every equation also generates a table. So I'm going to come out with the equation first. Based on this sentence that they have here, they said that they travel 50 miles per hour. So the word per hour here indicates that when 1 hour passes by, they travel 50 miles. What about if 2 hours passes by and they're traveling the same distance? They're gonna have how many miles, guys? In 2 hours, 50 times 2, great. And what about in 3 hours? 50 times 3, awesome. And what about in 4 hours? That will be 50 times 4, excellent. So we know that this 50 here, and the word per means a multiplication, and for hours they're using the letter T, great. And that's gonna give me the total distance, right? And for distance, they're using the letter T. Awesome, so that will be your equation. So now, because I have a table, because I have a graph, I can have a table. So that's what I'm gonna draw now. And I'm gonna pause so I can bring the table for you guys. On the left side, we're gonna be recording the values of x, and on the right side, we're gonna record the values of y. And then on the left side, I know I'm gonna be reading those values from the x-axis, and on the y side, it's gonna be from the values on the y-axis. But I have an equation, so I'm gonna do the equation basically. And I like they have a 50 because 50 is a very friendly number. So I'm gonna get started with x equals 1. When x equals 1, y, which is gonna be the distance, and this is the time based on the story. The distance is gonna be 50 times x, which in this case is 50. Great, this is the value that we get here, and this is the value that we get here. So I'm gonna get started analyzing my graphs and see which of the graphs matches with the ordered pair for x equals 1 and y equals 50. So I'm gonna get started with choice A. And I'm gonna look when x equals 1, look here. I go from the first point towards the x-axis, that's my y. And I'm gonna go towards the y-axis. And it reads that it's 100. But based on our equation and in our table, we know that the distance must be a 50 and not 100. So we cannot take this one here. Now let's look at B. When x equals 1, right here, y equals 50. So far so good. This point is working, just that point. Now what about C? When x equals 1, y equals 50. Okay, this point here is working. Now let's check letter D. For letter D, when the time which is in the x-axis is a 1, look, I go now towards the y and I read 150. And I know it's not 150, it should be a 50 here. So this point didn't work. So we cannot take this choice D. Okay, great. Now let's continue. I'm gonna go for x equals 2. When x equals 2, and I'm gonna do the same equation that we came out with. To figure the distance, we will have to multiply 50 times now 2, because now the hours will be 2. You see that, guys? Great. And that's gonna give me 100. And I'm gonna highlight this in green because this is on the left, on the time side, and on the distance side, we highlight that in orange. Great, so now I'm just between B and C, remember? So I'm gonna check choice B. And I'm gonna check this point. Here, when the time is 2 hours, the distance traveled on the y side is 100. And it does match with our work on the table for x equals 2. Great, so looks like this one can be your answer. Now let's check C, which is the other graph that also was okay for the first point. You already know what's going on, right? Yes. So on this point here, we see the value of x is a 2. But what about the value of y? The total distance traveled stays the same, 50. And we know it's not going to stay the same. It's going to be increasing. But this line here, it means that they never changed the distance traveled. What could happen? They probably were just stop at